Now, our surprise guest, Lenny James. Alas, we can't afford her to cast our show, but, well, as casting agents go, she is the best.
I don't remember specifically the first time I met Johanna Ray. I think it might have been right after I met him. I think I went to her house and talked to her. But I just remember she was unlike any other casting director that I'd ever met. She just had this very calm personality that was sort of an unpressured thing. You know, I think casting directors often are just trying to please the director, or they're trying to please the studio, or they're trying to jam someone, you know, because like, no, because they have 3 more movies coming out, so they're going to be a big star by the time this one comes out. You know, like, so they're doing a different kind of arithmetic. And I think Johanna Ray has that very kind of like, you know, just she walks slowly and just kind of and really encourages David to cast people that she thinks are interesting, or at least, you know, her job is really to bring to understand his sensibility and bring people that he would think are like-minded.
I first met David when he was looking for someone for Blue Velvet, and I had just worked for Rafaela De Laurentiis, the producer, and was about to start another film for her. She said, Johanna, as long as you're doing Red Sonja, why don't you take this script home, Blue Velvet, and read it, and then come and meet with David, and you could do them both at the same time. And I said, okay. And the only thing was that I was really embarrassed about was that being given the 2 scripts the night before, I read all of Red Sonja because I had worked with that director, and I was working with him again, and I didn't get to finish Blue Velvet, and confessed to David that I hadn't completely finished it, which some directors would just like say, oh, well, then you may as well leave. But it didn't bother him at all.
You're in the process of recasting your lead actress, and we're asking you to keep an open mind.
The casting procedure is basically you start off by making lists of who you think are right for the lead roles. And then they pick someone off the list and offer them, and once they accept, if they accept, then you start off with the other roles.
I love you, but there's no way that they're going to let me cast this thing until I've seen everyone. I'll let you know as soon as I can.
Yeah, I know you will, because my manager is going to be bugging you day and night, okay? And me.
David shows me a finished script, and on Blue Velvet, he was doing post on Dune at the time. So he didn't have that much time to see actors, and I would bring in the actors that I thought. He already knew he wanted Kyle, and I would introduce him to other actors. And I got a little worried when he cast some of them on the first meeting, and they didn't audition or anything. And I said, well, don't you want them to read for the role? And also, he liked to look at the headshots. And so I knew for the next time I worked with him that I couldn't let him see any headshot that was of someone who couldn't act. I would put aside the ones with all the good actors and show them to him, and that's how he'd cast. It's as simple as that. And then because the headshots didn't always accurately reflect, you know, what the actors were really like, in my other casting sessions on other jobs, I decided I would take photos of the actors as they came in. And so I have about 24 huge photo albums. And on Mulholland Drive, David said, okay, Johanna, bring your photo albums up. And that's how he picked most of the actors from Mulholland Drive, out of the photo album.
I'd heard a little thing through this casting director that I know and had met with many times, who was always lovely, Johanna Ray. And she had told my agent that David has a particular process. I was told he goes through a bunch of photographs and picks out a few. And if he falls in love with number 2 out of those 5 pictures, he's not meeting number 3, 4, and 5. Well, this is what I was told, which meant that my odds were higher and greater. And so I thought, okay, I got to do this. And because what if he's only meeting 5 or 4 or maybe even 3 people? So I literally got off the plane and went straight into Johanna Ray's office, T-shirt and jeans, no makeup, nothing, rushed right there. Had no knowledge of what the part was or anything about the script.
I honestly don't remember when I first found Naomi, because it was actually so long before Mulholland Drive. And it just blew my mind when people said, "How did you find her? How did you find her?" I said, "She's been here. She's starred in movies on television. She's done a lot of work." And I couldn't understand why people weren't already familiar with her. But I'm so happy because she had told me before she came in, or after she met with David, that she was feeling so hopeless about her career and not working, that she was literally on the verge of giving it up.
Oh my, I'm sorry. My Aunt Ruth didn't tell me someone was going to be here. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I found Laura Harring. My son worked for me for a while as assisting in casting. And he then got to cast his own film. It was a very, very low budget film. And he put Laura in. She got the role in the film he was doing. And he just said, "Mom, you've got to meet this girl. You've got to meet this girl. She's great." And that's how I met her, was literally through my son.
From the beginning, this film was a Lynchian experience. I was driving on the freeway on the 101, and I got a call that David Lynch wanted to meet me tomorrow. Or no, today, Johanna Ray, which I had met on another film. And I got so excited that I actually bumped into the car in front of me and I had an accident. So I said, "I can't make it. I had an accident. I'll come tomorrow." And so I went to David's house the next day, and the executive assistant said, "Have you read the script?" I said, "No, I have no idea." And she said, "Your character has an accident on the opening of the film." And I thought that was so unique, so special, and I had this kind of a feeling that it was going to work out. But before then, I auditioned and I auditioned and I auditioned, and nothing happened. So I became a VJ for MTV and VH1 and hosted a lot of shows for Latin America and did all that. And then when I finally gave up, I'm like, I'm burned out. I don't want to do this anymore. I started doing theater in the downtown arts district here. And I was doing Commedia dell'arte, which was super fun. And that's when I got the call from Johanna Ray. When I gave it all up and I didn't care about acting in film and television anymore, I finally got the call. So I was very, very nervous meeting him. And the first few seconds of the meeting were so intense. Johanna Ray said, "Come very clean-faced and very simple, simply dressed." So I went in a white men's shirt, pants, and a long coat, no makeup. And he sat and looked at me, and he had seen a photo of me. This was the strangest casting experience I've ever had, where I didn't have to audition. He had seen a photo. He wanted to see me that day. I couldn't make it, so I went the next day. And as I walked in the room, he just looked at me and he said, good. 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 So, I giggled, you know, and he asked me a few questions, and then he said he wanted to share a piece of music with me. He wanted me to hear something, and so Angelo Badalamenti's opening of the movie comes on the speakers. Beautiful sound system. And I naturally, it took me to this place, this very haunting music. And I started looking at the wall because I was too shy to look at David, and I was just really taking the music in. And what I've heard is that when he shares music with actors, he's seeing if he can imagine them in the movie. And I was looking at a wall, and it kind of played very similarly to the movie without me knowing, just looking out the window of the limo in the opening of the movie. And so I think that at that moment, he probably knew that I was the person, but I didn't hear back for years. I mean, for a long time. It seemed like years.
What did you say?
They fired everyone.
Who fired everyone?
Justin was the only one that I recall who really had to audition because he was in New York at the time and he couldn't meet with David just like that. So he went on tape in New York and was totally incredible. And so then David requested that he be flown in to meet with him, and that's how it happened.
I'd done a failed pilot for CBS, and then I got a call about a project that David Lynch was doing. So immediately I perked up. I was a huge fan of his films, so when this opportunity came up, I was like, are you kidding? Of course. And then they said, but you're gonna go into a casting office, you're gonna answer some questions. And then I think it was months later, I got a phone call completely out of the blue saying, David Lynch wants to meet you. And I was like, great. And he wants to meet you in Los Angeles. And I was like, great. You know, like, when do I go? And they're like, you're leaving today. So I was like, all right, great. And I went to David's house and had no clue what to expect. Just thought, because I didn't have a visual picture of him in my head. I'd never seen a picture of him. So didn't know, I kind of just had a totally different idea of what he'd look like when he answered the door. I thought, obviously, I didn't even think he would answer the door. And he answered the door wearing his khaki pants and a white button-up shirt and a big shock of white hair, sort of like a cresting wave. And he invited me in, and we just started talking. I was actually, I think, thinking that I was going in. There's a wonderful scene in, I think it's Winky's Diner, and it's this very sort of a wonderful performance. He has this long monologue. It's sort of like a 2-page monologue, and I thought that was what I was going in for. And then he said, no, it would be for the role of Adam, and I was like, oh, that's great, you know. So we started reading a couple scenes, and I remember watching David get excited and kind of going like, this is great, you know. And it was just me and him in his office reading scenes. And then he got excited, and I remember him saying something to the effect of like, I wish we were, I just want to start, let's just begin. So I kind of knew that I'd maybe gotten the job. And I left, and I talked to Johanna Ray that evening, and she was like, yeah, I think David really liked you, and you know, let's see if this works out.
Howdy.
Howdy to you.
Beautiful evening.
Yeah.
Monty Montgomery, I remember going, who's going to play the cowboy? And he said, oh, I got this. It's an old friend of mine, Monty Montgomery. You know, he lives up in whatever. And, you know, he lived up near Runyon Canyon.
She want to thank you for coming all the way up here to see me from that nice hotel downtown.
No problem.
And I remember meeting him. He's a sweet, sweet guy. And I remember being in the makeup trailer that morning going like, hey, Monty, do you want to run? I knew he wasn't an actor. I said, do you want to run the lines? You got a lot of, you know, shoe leather you got to get through. So he was like, no, I looked at it last night, looked at it this morning, I'm pretty good. And I was like, all right, cool. And we got to set, and I remember we did Monty's coverage first, and I remember we started the scene, and it's something along the lines of like, like sometimes there's a buggy or whatever it is. And he got about 3 words into it, and he was like, oh, damn, I knew this. I looked at it this morning. Like he had this whole and I was like, but did you learn the line? He was like, no, but I looked at it. He didn't understand that like you actually have to learn the line, like the pressure of having cameras and this. It's like, if you don't know your lines. And Dave was like, oh, that's okay, Monty, that's all right. We're gonna figure this out. We'll just get it piece by piece, And so we tried sort of shouting out lines, as they came, and then that wasn't really working because there were too many pauses.
The way his life will be.
And eventually what we ended up doing, David might hate me for telling this story, we taped his lines to my forehead and my lip and my chest, and he basically just read off of me. He just read his lines off of my body. And all the papers were sort of hidden behind the camera. And it was just this very strange wooden performance. And I remember, and his eyes were kind of doing this, like as he's like going across the thing. I remember at the end of the night saying to David, like, I don't think that we got that. I don't think that worked. And he was like, no, he said, that was great. It's gonna be great. And then when you watch the scene, it's like, it's fantastic. It's so weird and so strange and so, it was exactly, it was just the most bizarre reading ever and much more terrifying in a way because he had this non-actor saying this stuff that was incredibly mysterious.
Now you will see me one more time if you do good. You'll see me 2 more times if you do bad. Good night.
The reason there were so many roles in Mulholland Drive, because there were a lot of characters that you only saw once, was that David knew exactly what he wanted to do with them should it be picked up and become a series, which was the original intent. And it was very disappointing that, it didn't become a series because it cast some really, really good people, in tiny little roles. Several people who normally would never play such a small role did it because they knew it was going to be better as the series grew on.
Remember, we were all very hopeful that we were going to get picked up as a series because obviously it had already done Twin Peaks. And so we were like, well, it could be like that. And I remember while we were shooting, like sort of hearing whispers that like ABC not only wasn't liking the footage, they were kind of tossing it around, like passing tapes around the office, kind of going like, I'm gonna check out what they shot today, and because David will do these takes that, will be, I remember he did one really, I'm probably burned like, 10,000 feet of film of me just like looking, like he's sort of shouting directions from the side. He always uses a megaphone, going like, all right, now you're scared, all right, stop it, all right, now you're this, so he would direct you through these things. He's looking for little pieces of gold to sort of mine out of that. So I'm sure that footage was going back to ABC, and they were just like, why do we need 10 minutes of, someone just staring off into the distance? And, so I remember sort of getting a chip on my shoulder with ABC and kind of going like, I don't like this. And they were showing up occasionally to set, which I think David put a stop to. There was a whole conversation about me smoking. Like that was sort of when they first put like a smoking ban on television. And David just couldn't even fathom that like anyone would tell him what to do. I mean, I think he sort of understood the parameters of nudity and sex and all that. But I remember there was a series of memos or something that went back and forth that were like, Justin can't smoke. And David's answer was like, but people smoke. In life, he couldn't wrap his head around like, I don't get, but people smoke. Like it's not like they don't smoke. And then there was another memo that got kicked back, like Justin can smoke, but must reference trying to quit at some point. So, they wanted me to sort of be like, and God, I gotta quit these things, like they're so bad for your health and I can't believe I'm smoking, or whatever that was. And then there was, I think the last one that came was like, Justin can can smoke but must have a hacking cough or something like. And then they finally gave up. And I think at that point we were all kind of like, they're not. And there was another shot of dog shit, I think, that was another big debate. Like they can shoot a piece of dog shit, but it can only fill like, you know, there's some rule about dog shit, like 2/8 of the frame or something like that. And David had, of course, like a big, beautiful push in or something. I don't know what it was on the dog shit. And I remember him saying, like, on set, going like, when he had heard that, he goes, bring me one person. I don't care if they're like 1 year old or 2 years old. Bring me one person that hasn't seen dog shit, and I won't shoot it. But he ended up shooting it. But I think at that point we sort of realized, like, oh, yeah, maybe they're not going to like our show so much, you know?
Camilla. You've come back.
I didn't know that I would have Betty Elms and Diane. The character that I thought I was playing in Mulholland Drive was just Betty Elms. And through the 2-hour pilot that we shot, I got an inkling that she was going to go in some different places and a different direction altogether. But who knew I was going to get Diane? Diane was freaky. And I figured that, you know, once it was all put together, that Diane was the true character and Betty was the alter ego, the dream she wanted. Yeah, Diane was messed up. She was, and that's the fun. That's the fun right there for an actor to just latch on to the cuckoo side of things. And she was jealous, she was dark, she was sexual, she was violent, she was awkward. She had all of those things that are fun for an actor to play. And, you know, in life, we present ourselves as these people, and we have to behave ourselves and be pleasant and well-mannered. And it's fun to be an actor and get to try other things, you know, and put it on the screen.
So when we finished the pilot, and I got a call from David, and he said, Laura, Mulholland Drive is dead in the water. And there was so many feelings I had that it wasn't so. And David says it in interviews. He said, Laura always believed. I just believed that something was going to happen and it would, in the end, get picked up. It didn't get picked up. It was made into a feature, which is even nicer. And he called Naomi and I to come to his house, and he sat, I think Naomi was on his right and I was on his left, and he said, girls, Mulholland Drive is going to be an international feature film. And then he turned to me and he goes, but there's going to be nudity. And he took his hand out and I shook his hand. And then I went, oh boy, what did I just do? And David, being, you know, such a gentleman, he said, it's going to be very tasteful. You don't have to do anything that's not, you know, comfortable. And he gave me his word that I wouldn't be fully exposed, and he kept his word.
Good night.
When you work with somebody like David, such an artist, there's such trust. And I knew that it was going to be very beautiful. Nevertheless, it was very vulnerable. And I had a hard time. I had watery eyes when I was doing it. But there was a part of me that was trusting David, you know, and he was very kind, and he showed me a loop of how it was going to look. It looked very dark. And then on the last take, he told the cinematographer, pump it up, Pete, which is a light. And, but it all worked out great. I think it looks great. And he was very specific, because Naomi and I were very shy. We weren't touching each other, we're just very shy. And David's just the best director all around, makes you feel so safe. And you know he's a true artist, so he's never going to exploit you. It's perfect.
Good afternoon, Mr. Roque.
Her name is Camilla Rhodes. The director doesn't want her.
Do you want him replaced?
You'd think that like making a David Lynch film is this incredibly dark and serious kind of, but he's a very light person, like a very light personality. And so and he keeps his crew laughing and motivated, and he's very good at, as far as directing actors, he'll use weird terms, he'll be like, this is kind of bluer than that, or he'll use like hand gestures, he'll be like, it's like this, and then it goes dang, like that, like, I want you to fuck it, like, and he'll just kind of give you these directions that you kind of can intuit just because he's kind of seeing it, and you're kind of trying to see it, and then you'll just kind of, it's a liberating way of working, because he would, whenever I would ask him questions of like, what does this mean? Where am I going? Why am I asking this question? Who is that person in my life? He would always kind of answer with like, I don't know, let's find out.
There wasn't a huge amount of heady discussions. Some directors want to talk things till you're sort of saturated in information, and I don't think he wants to do that. I think he wants, because that's where he works from, he wants to tap into your gut too, because I feel like there's more freedom if that's the thing that's leading you rather than thoughts in the head. And in fact, a lot of information can really get in the way of things. So I think he wanted to always keep it open for new ideas to bubble up. And like I said, if it wasn't working, if the magic wasn't there, he'd just keep going. And of course, we always had questions. Oh, does this mean that? Is this why she's going here? And is that, who's that character? And who, and he would sort of delight in the mystery of it, and not giving forth the information that you needed. And then you just sort of relax, because that's just his way. And that's when you could just sort of say, okay, I'm just gonna give myself to you, and I trust you.
Working with David was like working with a poet. He always gave me metaphors and similes. It was beautiful. The moment you walked on set, you were walking into his world. And there was magic in the air. When I was doing the last bit of the movie, he never said to me, you're an old Hollywood glamorous movie star, or anything of that nature. All he said to me when I was walking up the steps for the secret garden into the party, he said, walk like a kitty cat, Laura, on the pole, like a kitty cat. And that was, for me, very clear. Sensual, soft, and being a dancer, I thought, it was just easy to do that.
It's great seeing the film for the first time, always. And, getting little surprises sometimes, and seeing how David had the actor play the role, which might have been different from what I was expecting, and seeing, how creative and brilliant he is. And yeah, it's not always great seeing the film that you just worked on, but in David's case, it is.
To me, it's a personal journey, and, being a meditator myself, and being very familiar with how the mind works, I find a lot of metaphors in his movies. And I think that's why people resonate with his pieces. I think there's some deep philosophical messages, questions, experiences as a human being that we all go through. The human drama. We all have dreams, regrets, and sometimes life is wonderful, and sometimes, our dreams don't come true. And I think David touches on that a lot in Mulholland Drive, at least to me, in my interpretation.
There's a lot of talk of how David works in dream logic, and you know, that it doesn't necessarily have to make sense. I think people who are really trying to break it down and go like, you know, well, no, this is the thing, and the blue key is that, and this is that. I think you're going to end up frustrating yourself because there is not connective tissue between certain things, and that's okay. And I think that's what David's always saying. I remember when we went to Cannes with it, I remember him kind of sitting us all down and going like, now listen, these fucking reporters are gonna try and get you to tell them what the story's about. And I don't want you to do that, you know, like it ruins the experience for everyone else, you know? And he's absolutely right, and that goes for every movie, kind of, you know, if you sort of tell people what they're gonna get before they get it, it doesn't serve the experience of watching the thing. The first time I saw the film, I saw it with Naomi, he invited me and her up to his house with Peter Deming and him. And he has this beautiful screening room that's a work of art. And I remember it started and there was the jitterbug scene at the beginning. I remember in my head going like, wait, when did they shoot this? That wasn't in the script. I don't remember that, or maybe it was in the script. And again, it always goes back to sort of that feeling you have when you're making a film. And we laughed and had such a great time and all sort of fell in love with each other in this wonderful way. And then when you watch the film, you're immediately kind of sucked in, but it was just so gripping and so moving and so odd and so everything you want in a wonderful David Lynch film. And I remember it came to a close and immediately Peter Deming and David started talking like they did this big sidebar. And me and Naomi went out to smoke a cigarette on the street. And I just knew her life was gonna be different. Like I was just like, that was fucking incredible. Like that was, and she was kind of nervous. Like, do you think it was? I was like, are you kidding?
You're playing a dangerous game here. If you're trying to blackmail me, it's not gonna work.
There were a few times where it was down to the last straw, you know, I can't pay the rent, or I'm giving up, I'm going back to Australia. And then I'd suddenly get a job at the last minute, sort of hook me back in. Okay, stick to it, hang about, maybe this will change things. No, it didn't really. Okay, get through the next 6 months, nothing. You know, I was on that kind of cycle. But I never had the opportunity of working with a fancy, all-time great director. So I had high hopes, and my friend Nicole Kidman, who had been my sort of support system here in LA, was saying, look, hang in there. It can just be one thing that could change your luck. And she was right. This was it.
You know what I want? It's not that difficult.
Get out. Get out before I call my dad.
I had to leave Cannes and go back to, I was filming in Queensland, this movie of the week. And I was suddenly I was shooting in a field miles from anywhere, and this gigantic bunch of flowers arrived for me saying, you know, would love to meet with you when you're back in LA, you know, love so-and-so from ICM or William Morris or whatever, I can't remember who. But it was a really dramatic change for me overnight, because you get that kind of role showcased, your talent showcased in that one film, and the film is being seen by all of the great filmmakers in America and worldwide, and the critics are loving it and singling you out. So it was like overnight the best kind of change you could hope for as an actor.
It was at Cannes, and I remember there was a hush. And we looked at each other, and it wasn't for a few seconds. David looks over at me, I look over at him. We're all kind of looking at each other, and then all of a sudden there's a roar of applause and a standing ovation. And that was a very intense moment, I thought. But David had prepared us before going to Cannes. David had prepared us before going to Cannes, and he said, girls, you know, at Cannes, they can boo you. He said, they can boo you, so keep your chin up, because creativity is an art form that nobody can really judge. It's your expression, and your expression is good enough.